workshop, the current state of EOSC and the EOSC Association. Jana, welcome.
Welcome, Miriam. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and good morning also from my side. I have the honor, as Miriam said, to chair the first session. It's the third workshop, ESFRI workshop, dedicated to the topic of EOSC, and as Miriam said, the second one online. Now, there's no question that scientific data and other digital research outputs, such as codes and software, need to be more open, reused, and similar. This was also emphasized by policymakers in the recent New ERA governance conclusions, where in the ERA policy agenda, there's a particular action dedicated to EOSC to bring it to the next step in open data sharing, seamless access, and reuse of data. Now, on the side of ESFRI, we will continue to support the developments of ESFRI. We took the commitment also in the white paper, which was adopted in 2019. Now, in the white paper, we, as ESFRI, took the commitment to continuously support EOSC, and also we agreed that Europe should continue to support such developments. We also, as ESFRI, recognize the achievements of and the relevance of research infrastructures when it comes to development and implementation of EOSC, and invited European Commission member states, associated states, and EOSC to take full advantage of the well-performing best practices in data management, storage, and curation, which is already implemented by research infrastructures. Now, we also recognized the need for more data professionals and their education. Now, a part of this commitment of ESFRI is implemented through the ESFRI's task force, which is organizing this meeting. Now, this task force, which is chaired by Mirjam van Dalen, is dedicated to the topic of what does EOSC bring to the RI users. Now, it's a very pertinent topic. EOSC is often perceived as a top-down initiative with little emphasis on the users. Now, RIs are big data producers, there's no question about this, but they also have a critical mass of defined user communities. Now, in particular, through the EOSC projects, research infrastructures develop key initiatives to bring users closer to the EOSC, also in its development and its developments and implementation, but also, for example, through the presentation of the use cases, which is very relevant also for understanding of users, everything that demonstration to the users, the different options that EOSC can help them. Now, today's first session is dedicated to the scope, the EOSC current state, and the EOSC Association. And we have three distinguished speakers with us, starting with Kostas Glinos, who's replacing Anna Panagopoulou. Now, Kostas is head of Open Science Unit. The topic of his presentation is ESFRI and the EOSC in the renewed era. Kostas, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Jana, for the introduction. And apologies again by Anna, who was called today and tomorrow is the first council for of the research ministers under the French presidency in Paris, and she was called. She had to go this morning to be in Paris for that. So I have to replace her. You can hear me all right, I presume?
Yes.
Yes, okay. welcome everybody to this event organized by the ESFRI Task Force on EOSC with support of the STR ESFRI 2 project and in collaboration with the EOSC Association, the Science Cluster Projects and the EOSC Future Project, as well as the Commission. This is the third workshop of this kind since 2019, but while the other two previous workshops focused on possible synergies and the interrelations between the ESFRI infrastructures and the EOSC, this workshop today is centered on users of research infrastructures and how the users can truly benefit from the EOSC. So bringing together the ESFRI and EOSC communities like today works to everybody's advantage. With ESFRI, the EU continues to support a rich landscape of world-class research infrastructures with its thematic ESFRI projects and landmarks. Whereas with EOSC, we progressively federate these infrastructures together also with other e-infrastructures existing in Europe to enable seamless access to data and services across the different scientific communities and of course across borders to facilitate multidisciplinary research and to accelerate the uptake of open science by the millions of European researchers. So I'm convinced that combining the huge expertise in these two initiatives helps to make the European research infrastructures even more performant and attractive for all scientific communities and all researchers. Ultimately, we are all working at seizing the opportunities offered by the digital transition to enable a cultural shift in the way European researchers do science. So enabling them to share, curate, preserve, reuse, process digital research outputs such as data, software, and codes as part of their everyday practice, and at the same time expanding and deepening the pursuit of scientific excellence by ensuring the reproducibility of their research results and striving for societal trust in science, which is so important today. The ESFRI infrastructures have demonstrated their effectiveness in communicating with and organizing at European level the scientific communities of reference. This is why they can act as mediators between end users, which is again the topic today, and the EOSC. Research infrastructures can therefore help in fostering the adoption of open science practices and raising awareness on the opportunities provided by the EOSC. They can also collect user needs to steer the evolution of the EOSC ecosystem and to ensure that the EOSC platform under development truly fits major needs of the researchers across borders and communities. ESFRI infrastructures were already involved in Horizon 2020 activities supporting EOSC. I believe the two previous workshops have already prepared the ground for their participation in the EOSC Association. To mention one example of synergy between EOSC and research infrastructures is the COVID-19 crisis, where this pandemic highlighted the critical value of open science, open data, and international collaboration between research infrastructures in order to accelerate scientific discovery of vaccines, medicines, and treatments for COVID. The European COVID-19 data platform, for instance, which was launched almost 2 years ago, has allowed researchers from over 90 countries to submit more than 6 million data records, including viral genomes and raw viral sequences. In the dawn of this effort, national COVID-19 data portals have also been developed by several member states and some third countries and have been connected to the European platform. This action was developed under EOSC and with ESFRI infrastructure support and was part of the ERA versus Corona action plan supported by the Commission and the EU member states. It delivered beyond our expectations because we were able exactly to join forces and to scale up our response. Now, a few words about ERA and the new policy agenda. With a new or renewed European research area, we follow a somewhat similar approach, combining the strengths of co-creation, mobilization, programmatic alignment, and synergies at European and at member state level, together with open science, skills development, and world-class interconnected infrastructures. We believe that this will make European research and innovation more efficient and more attractive. Following the conclusions by the Council last November, the Commission now is setting out a new collaborative framework with the Member States and the research stakeholders to prioritize investments, improve access to excellence, promote the free circulation of knowledge, and accelerate the translation of research results into society and the economy. This framework notably foresees interfaces with the ESFRI and the EOSC steering board. At the same time, the Council agreed on the Common Era policy agenda for 3 years, for 22 to 24. This is a set of 20 actions to make European research and innovation more efficient. Member States were invited to commit by middle of this year or not commit in these actions. Research infrastructure and EOSC have a role to play in many of these actions. For example, in particular, in 2 actions that contribute to deepening a truly functional internal market for knowledge. It is Action 1 and Action 8 in the policy agenda. Action 1 is to enable the open sharing of knowledge and the reuse of research outputs, including through the development of EOSC. And Action 8, it is to strengthen the sustainability, accessibility, and resilience of research infrastructures in the European research area. So let me tell you about a couple of words about each of these actions. So under Action 1, related to EOSC, the Commission will initiate in autumn this year a procurement procedure for the deployment and production of a fully operational platform supporting the European Open Science Cloud. This EOSC platform will provide access to a rich set of fair data and services and will enable the combined use of high-performance computing, cloud, data, networks, and artificial intelligence. It's supposed to be available 24/7, starting from 2023, and we aim that the platform provides a superior user experience for a very large number of users. The EOSC governance will also establish a monitoring capacity to collect data and benchmark investments, policies, research outputs, skills, and infrastructure capacities related to EOSC and to open science. This will be a key contribution to the future era monitoring system. As EOSC develops, it will also gather and monitor data that could be used in new frameworks for research assessment, which is one of our other priorities, and will investigate financial models for cross-research infrastructure service provision through the EOSC. About Action 8, the successive ESFRI roadmaps and the European Research Infrastructure Consortium legal framework have radically enriched the landscape of available facilities for scientists and for innovators in Europe. We must take stock of what's existing and identify gaps. This is the backbone of Action 8. It will be a strategic analysis of the European research infrastructure landscape and a review of the implementation of the ERIC framework. It will also look at means to broaden and sustain access to European infrastructures and services for all countries. This will include the revision of the European Charter of Access to Research Infrastructures. These activities, augmented by the monitoring of the research infrastructure performance, will be essential also for updating the ESFRI roadmap. Last but not least, this action number 8 foresees increased cooperation between research infrastructures, e-infrastructures, and stakeholders, including through the EOSC, which falls exactly in the focus of this workshop today. We'll support the ERA policy agenda with the Horizon Europe work programs, in particular those related to research infrastructures and the widening participation and strengthening of the European research area. Under the research infrastructures, we'll continue to invest in the development of a continuum of services and fair resources, fair as in findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, supporting excellence of science and interdisciplinary research, addressing our social and environmental challenges. This continuum can be ensured by a synergetic effort between research infrastructures on the one hand and EOSC on the other. Research infrastructures at international, European, national, and even institutional levels are called to play a more active role in the development of the federated European Open Science Cloud. We have a structure to represent the voice of the European research community, which is the EOSC Association. And the good news is that the association is now transitioning to full operation. So to conclude, I would like to emphasize that the success of EOSC will largely depend on a change of culture among the researchers towards openness. Research funders, like the Commission, are increasingly committed to foster open access, data management along the FAIR principles, as well as adapting the system of incentive and rewards. And we're not alone in doing this. Many or most of the other funders in the European Union are doing similarly. The discussion during these 2 days will hopefully help us to understand what should be improved to ensure a rich EOSC-ESFRI ecosystem of interoperable data, composable services, and connected research infrastructures. The Commission looks forward to hearing the voice of the users in this discussion, the users of research infrastructures, and to gather your recommendations to build a user-friendly EOSC. So I wish you all a very successful workshop.
Thank you very much, Kostas, for presenting the role of research infrastructures in the new era, now in the new era policy agenda. This was recently introduced by the Council, and it really starts with it. We have embarked on this exciting new era of development of European research area with actions which need to be implemented within the next 3 years. And as you said, of particular relevance to the development of EOSC are these actions, one related to EOSC and action 8 dedicated to research infrastructures. Now with this, we certainly have more policy clarity in which directions we should move within 3 years, which research infrastructures and the policymakers surely welcome. Now, it's also important what you said that research infrastructures and EOSC basically will be more closely integrated into the implementation of this era policy agenda as stakeholders. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I would like to reiterate what Miriam said at the beginning, that there's the Q&A facility available at this Zoom. So if you press on it, you can post questions for Kostas and the other 2 speakers in this session. We will take the questions at the end. Now, you can also vote for your favorite questions, so they're more likely to be picked at the end of the 3 presentations. So the next one, the next speaker is Mirjam van Dalen, chair of the ESFRI Task Force on EOSC, and she will present the scope of this event, of this workshop. Mirjam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jana, for your kind introduction. So I would like to show you what the scope of the workshop is, and what the work of the task force is also in a nutshell. What does the European Open Science Cloud bring the users of research infrastructures or the end users? So what is the connection between ESFRI and EOSC? So ESFRI started this task force in 2019 already, a while ago, and to be the tool for ESFRI to become a strategic partner in EOSC, and to have a collaboration with EOSC. So the task force in ESFRI is collaborating with EOSC on the policy level, strategical level, science clusters and thematic RIs, and with horizontal service providers. and also has a liaison with the EOSC Association and is working closely together. As you know, the task force, together with the Stress-Free Project, the Athena team, and of course the Commission, organized, as Kostas mentioned before, already several workshops to engage the stakeholders of EOSC and ESFRI in this co-creation of the European Open Science Cloud. So the first event, as probably a lot of you have been to, was in La Palma. This was a face-to-face event. I think we forgot already nearly how this works to meet for real. This La Palma event had a lot of output, which went into the ESFRI white paper that Jana just mentioned before, while introducing this session. Then there was the second ESFRI workshop that took place in October 2020. And there was also a session in the EOSC Symposium in June last year on the engagement and cross-fertilization between the thematic research infrastructures and the European Open Science Cloud. So the scope of this third workshop, as already mentioned several times, is to bring together ESFRI, the ESFRI Research Infrastructures, and the EOSC stakeholders. The goal is to showcase and better understand the concept of EOSC, and with that also the open science and fair policy agenda, the vision of EOSC for the future, the benefits for its users, and to ensure an optimal federation of clusters and research infrastructures with the European Open Science Cloud. It's also to present the current state of the European Open Science Cloud and to see how thematic research infrastructures and ESFRI clusters fit into this developing landscape of EOSC. It includes the three-party partnership with the new legal entity, the EOSC Association, on which Ute will report a little later, and its strategic innovation and research agenda, the SRIA, to convey ESFRI research infrastructures clusters and the ESFRI task force on EOSC positions into shaping the European Open Science Cloud, and also to show the partnership of ESFRI with the newly established EOSC Association. How do the research communities and researchers can use and benefit from EOSC and getting an added value? This is the topic of today's workshop. We are focusing on the current state of EOSC and the EOSC Association, on the researcher engagement and adoption in EOSC. We look into the EOSC added value for the thematic communities. How can research infrastructure end users benefit from EOSC? How can generic and thematic EOSC services can add value to the research infrastructure community? And then there is the important point of the co-creation between providers and users of the EOSC vision in terms of service portfolio for the users. And then in the end, I want to remind you of the EOSC design principle, which is co-creation. So this is something that we create together. So there is, of course, EOSC as a building, but there are the users of EOSC which do an important part in co-creating this European Open Science Cloud for the optimal benefit of the end users. And this slide was made by Sarah Jones, I think 2 years ago, but I find it very useful to show it again, as EOSC is research-led, as you see, community-driven, flexible by design, and it needs continuous engagement and consulting and user testing. So the users are really needed and wanted here. And with that, I already finished, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Miriam. Yeah, thank you for presenting the outline and the objectives of these workshops, which will bring together ESFRI RIs and different EOSC stakeholders to discuss the pertinent issues linked to further development of EOSC. In fact, there's a lot of open issues related to it, and I hope that some of them will be addressed, at least some of them will be addressed today. Now, we will go now to the next speaker, which is Ute Gusenheimer, EOSC Association Secretary General. And her presentation will deal with the EOSC Association and its working groups and task forces. So, Ute, the screen is yours.
Thanks very much, Jana. And I'll share my slides, which I hope you can see now. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to present an update on the EOSC Association and where do we stand organizationally and also in particular with the setup and implementation of the working groups and task forces. So today's topics do not only address those two items, but I also would like to look a little bit into the Horizon Europe EOSC partnership that was launched last year and the working mechanisms of that. And then in the end, come up with a proposal how we can strengthen the collaboration between ESFRI, the ESFRI infrastructures, as well as the EOSC Association. For, let's say, everyone who has been following the journey of EOSC, maybe not that closely, just to remind that there was in the years 2019 and 2020 a kind of initial EOSC governance that then in the course of the year 2020 proposed that EOSC should be part of Horizon Europe in the framework of a co-programmed partnership. And in order to set up such a partnership with the European Commission, you need to have a legal entity. And that's why in 2020, in summer, the EOSC Association, as a AISBL, an international non-profit association under Belgian law, was established. And this association then formed with the European Commission, and there the lead DG is DG Research and Innovation. We formed a partnership that was presented to the public with the launch of Horizon Europe in June last year. And just to, let's say, update you where we stand with the member base of EOSC Association, we do have, as of today, 161 members and 73 observers, and they represent research performing organizations, research providing service organization, and funding organizations. And to look into the country representation, there you see that we have a strong representation from France, Italy, Spain, and then moving upwards to the northeast, so to speak. The Central and Eastern European countries are not that strongly represented yet. I had a look into how does our ESFRI projects and landmarks representation look like. And in this overview, you see that we have 17 of the projects and landmarks being members or observers in the EOSC Association. And I also looked a little bit into the other affiliations. And then you see that, of course, many of them are at the same time part and beneficiaries in the EOSC cluster projects, as well as in EOSC Future, presenting a very strong pillar there. And then just the details. So if we look at all the ESFRI projects and landmarks relative to the whole roadmap, we see that it's a fourth. And if we just look at the landmark, then it's actually a third of all the ESFRI research infrastructure landmarks are already organized in the EOSC Association. I would like to present our board of directors to you, because the EOSC Association is governed by its General Assembly and they elect a board, and this board is represented by 9 individuals, and you will meet many of them in the course of the next 2 days. President is Karel Leuben, and closer related to the ESFRI infrastructure environment is Maria Luisa Lavitrano, who is the Italian node of BBMRI. Susanne Dumichel you will meet in a in the second session from OPRAS, and then the third one is Bob Jones from CERN. So as I said, you will meet them all in the course, not all, you meet 4 of them in the course of the next 2 days. To look into task forces and the advisory groups, we have established, and that has been a long and community-driven process over the last year, 5 advisory groups. And under those 5 advisory groups, there are either 2 or 3 thematic task forces. And I would like to go through them now with you and also show you how they're organized. So we have implementation of EOSC. There, the board liaison is Suzanne Dumichel, and there we have rules of participation, the PIT policy and implementation, and researcher engagement and adoption. So these 3 task forces are closely coordinated with each other, and then we have always a go-to point in the board in order to ensure alignment and good communication flow. For the technical challenges on EOSC, Ignacio Blanquer, who you will meet tomorrow in the session, is the coordinator from the board, and there the subgroups are technical interoperability of data and services, infrastructure for quality research software, and the AI architecture. For metadata and data quality, we have 2 subgroups or task forces: semantic interoperability, fair metrics, and data quality. And Sarah Jones is there, the board liaison. She's also in the next session already. Then we have research careers and curricula that is coordinated from the board side from Wilhelm Wittmark, who is from Stockholm University, also presenting the library sector. And there the subgroups are data stewardship, curricula, and career paths, research careers, recognition and credit, and upskilling countries to engage in EOSC. And the last advisory group, there Bob Jones is the contact person in the board, is sustaining EOSC, with 2 sub-task forces or task forces: financial sustainability and long-term data preservation. The task force, let's say, setup has been a long and, as I said, bottom-up co-creative process. And we have received, I mean, a tremendous amount of applications showing the interest in participating and actively contributing to the shaping of EOSC. So it was 545 applications were received last summer, and we made the choice to approve as many as possible in order to allow as broad as possible collaboration with the EOSC Association. So 444 applications have been approved, and these individuals are now members of our task forces. And this is just for the statistics, is to show again, it represents basically proportionally somewhat the members and the observers, as well as external third parties who are not yet member of the EOSC Association. And when we look into the countries, there it's rather by size of country than by size of membership in the EOSC Association, as you can see from this view graph. And then the last one is how are ESFRI projects and landmarks being represented. And let's say, I would say 41 is actually a too low number, but I only went to the primary affiliations we have in our databases, and I could very well imagine that many of the university participants might have also another affiliation that is linked to an ESFRI research infrastructure. I would like to spend a bit time on this Horizon Europe co-program partnership, because that is the framework that we are working in at the moment. And I think it's important to understand how you are already embedded in that. So as I said, it was launched with Horizon Europe in June last year. And it is governed and guided by a memorandum of understanding that covers a period of 10 years. So it goes up to 2030. This memorandum might not be legally binding, however, we take it very seriously. And I would like to focus on one, or let's say on 2 aspects. The one aspect is that the European Commission has committed to roll out up to 490 million euros in the framework of Horizon Europe through calls to EOSC dedicated activities. And we, as the EOSC Association, we have committed to do at least 500 million euros of in-kind contribution, achieving the same set of objectives that are outlined in the 3R. And when it comes to the commitment, we have to report on that. And for the Commission, they have to duly take into account the input and advice from EOSC Association when defining call topics relative to the scope and objective of the TRIA. So, and now here it comes, just to remind everyone, we are in the same box together. So that's Horizon Europe, and EOSC is in the Research Infrastructure Work Program, and we are their destination too. So we are already sitting in the same box. And a little bit of history in that sense that has been addressed already in the previous talks is the ESFRI research, mainly landmark projects, have been, let's say, nicely participating and contributing already under Horizon 2020. And what I did here is I just added up the total amounts of the grants that have been handed out to the cluster projects. I added expands since it is very closely working with PANOSC, and then looked into the contributions to ESFRI landmarks in EOSC Future, where the clusters are a pillar of this horizon of EOSC Future. And then you see that the amount that is summed up there is 100 million euros, which is already a strong involvement in the development of the progress of EOSC. In order of where do we stand at the moment? So we are now in Horizon Europe. The first calls for 2021 have just been awarded. 2022 is ongoing. So it's time to shape 2023. And as I said, as one of our rights in the partnership, we can advise the Commission of what should be addressed in the next calls. It's not our decision as an association, because that is subject to the comitology procedure between the Commission and the member states. We have consulted our members as well as the task forces of what should be addressed, and we have shared all this with the European Commission. And we expect now that in the course of this week, the first draft of the 2023-2024 work program will be published. And then I guess it will be up to you, to your other routes of, let's say, informing the decision makers on the work program, to basically inform them about your use, what should be strengthened or not. What we are doing in the association is that we want to update our multi-annual roadmap. So to remember, this on the left is basically our Bible. That's the strategic research and innovation agenda of the EOSC. And that has a chapter that is dedicated to a multi-annual roadmap, and that has exactly the same phases as the Horizon Europe work programs. And what we are going to do in the next weeks is that we are going to update the stage 2 for 2023 and 2024. And Sarah Jones, who you will be meeting in the next session, will be coordinating this process. And we have already sensitized our task forces that this is coming, and that we are looking for their input in order to be able to have an updated TRIA and multi-annual roadmap that matches what's happening on the EU level, but also addresses what should happen on a national level and an institutional level. And that will be then put out in March to a consultation where we invite all of you then to contribute and participate. We've talked already about ERA and the Council conclusions from November last year. And so I just say, as already said, EOSC is action number 1. The research infrastructures are addressed under action number 8. But in between, there are other activities and actions that I think that are relevant, especially for today's topic, with the action number 3, the reform of research assessment systems, and the research careers that are also addressed by the task forces of the EOSC Association. So I think that's a fantastic foundation for strengthening the collaboration between ESFRI, the ESFRI projects and landmarks, and the EOSC Association. And what I would like to propose is that we establish a dedicated collaboration format and channel that we might not yet have that you actively participate in the upcoming MAR consultation. And finally, that we work together when reaching out to the member states and associated countries, because the EOSC Association is planning in this year to organize partner days in our member countries. And there, I think that's a good opportunity to join forces. Thanks very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Ute, for this presentation. Now we have 10 minutes for question and answers. We have so far a very limited response from the audience. There are 3 questions so far, mainly addressed to Ute. So I invite all the audience to use the Q&A facility and use this opportunity to ask our speakers to elaborate on some issues. Now, while we are waiting for some questions from the audience, I would like to, I'll propose first a question for Kostas. I actually have 2 questions for you, and I would like you to, so we don't need much time, so we are looking for short answers from all of the speakers. Now you have mentioned that in the new era, stakeholders will be involved in the implementation of the ERA policy agenda. Kostas, could you tell us how do you see the involvement of the stakeholders in this? We know that some parts were left open, but I'm interested in the current opinions on the topic.
Thank you, Jana. So it depends on the action. So we don't have one solution fits all for the involvement of stakeholders. Some of the actions may be entirely owned eventually by stakeholders. Some others member states may be or may need to be more active. I can bring the example of our initiative, the action number 2 or 3, I think, on the policy agenda, which is the reform of the research assessment system, where the aim is that it is entirely stakeholder owned and driven, and what we are putting together for this item in the policy agenda, an initiative that will be driven by the universities, by other research performers, by the research funders, and by the research assessment agencies who have been working on this for the last year. We have been talking to a lot of stakeholders, and we have organized the initiative so that the Commission acts simply as a facilitator to enable the initiative to come together, but it's entirely, again, stakeholder driven. So it depends on the particular action that we are talking about. Another action, of course, is EOSC, and you know very well to what extent it is stakeholder driven or not stakeholder driven. I mean, this is where a lot of the audience comes from. So, but there is no one size fits all, because it has to fit the purpose, the nature of the particular action.
Yes, so coming back to the EOSC, which related to the part that you just mentioned. So how do you see, what is the most effective way in which research infrastructures, ESFRI or more general research infrastructures, can shape EOSC and contribute to the implementation of Action 1 and 8?
We have 2 very important bodies. We have ESFRI and EOSC. EOSC has a tripartite governance because there is the EOSC Association, which precisely brings all the stakeholders together, or aims to bring all the stakeholders together. I don't remember how many members they have currently. I think it's in the order of 250. So it's quite a bit already. It is lots of universities, lots of research institutes and so on, infrastructures, other service providers. And there is, it's a tripartite because in addition to the EOSC Association, there is also the EOSC Steering Board, and the Steering Board brings together the member states and the associated countries. So there is a very clear stakeholder drive in this, and the Commission with the stakeholders has established, as you probably know, a co-programmed partnership. It is the $500 million of funding that I think Ute mentioned earlier. and precisely so that it is stakeholder driven. So, I mean, we could have done or as who have been doing in Horizon 2020, the traditional approach of the Commission drafting the work programs, taking following consultations with stakeholders. But here we are doing a more partnership approach where stakeholders are really in the driving seat on how EOSC will develop. So I think this is a very good example on how stakeholders are involved. Research infrastructures now should and can be members, and they are members, many of them. I don't know the percentage, but there are many of them are already members of the EOSC Association and come in this way. In addition, we have ESFRI, and we have the member states driving it. These member states are part of the EOSC steering board. They participate fully in the development of the EOSC from the member state perspective, so in a link between what member states are after in the EOSC steering board and what member states are after in ESFRI is also very important.
Thank you,
I think
Kostas.
we have all the links. We have all the links there, and
Yes.
yeah, we can be really synergetic.
Yes, thank you, Kostas. We are running out of time. Uta, there are many questions for you. There are some questions for you in the chat, not in the chat, but in Q&A facility. I will pick up one and I ask you to address, if possible, if you type the answer to the rest. Okay. So one that has received most votes is the one by Claudia Allen Amaro, asking you to elaborate on the following. The work of the task forces is self-funded by its members. Separately, we have the work of a series of the EC-funded projects, which in many cases deal with similar issues. So could you elaborate briefly on this? We don't have much time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Claudia. And I think indeed that is what we have to achieve, that we work here in a synergetic way. And we have now started within the association to have regular meetings with the task force's co-chairs. So each task force has a duo of 2 chairs who are coordinating the activities. And we're meeting them every month. And actually our board member, Ignacio Blanca, is the coordinator there. And we basically try to share as much knowledge as we have about what's going on in the community in order to avoid duplication. The aim is to work complementarily, and that's what we're working towards. So, I mean, the more we know, the better we can coordinate it and avoid duplication of work.
Thank you. So Uta, I kindly, and also Kostas, I kindly ask you to look at the Q&A and type the answers to the questions if possible. Now I will extend this session by 2 minutes and also ask Miriam, how do you see the role of ESFRI in the delivery of the new era related to EOSC and the RIs, so Action 8 and 1? Thank you very much.
Thank you for this question, Jana. I think we will can add to the ERA by the work of the going on with the work of the task force of ESFRI on the European Open Science Cloud, which contains experts in the different EOSC boards. And with this and organizing events like we organize today, and using the output of this event, such as we did for the ESFRI white paper, to use that as input to the ERA. And then, of course, we should not forget the output of the work that is done by the ESFRI clusters, which are still running, which is extremely important as input to the ERA.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Miriam. I would like to thank you, all 3 speakers. Unfortunately, the time's run out and we need to switch to the second session. Just to conclude that we have a lot of relevant issues have been raised, and I think that I hope they will provide the frame for the rest of the workshop, and also some food for thought to address during the subsequent sessions. Thank you very much, the speakers and the audience, for participating in this session. So this brings us to the end of this.
Thank you very much, Jana, for excellent sharing of this session. So we came to a break already before we start session 2, which is shared by Kostas. And I would ask you to reconvene here at 11 o'clock to start the second session. And just for your information, so the summary of this session will be tomorrow at the end of the meeting, at the end of day 2. And yeah, we'll see each other back here at 11 o'clock.